in arts, education in music, dance, theater, and visual arts for students ages 10 to 18. Rooted in creativity and community, JS, JNSA2 empowers youth through artistic expression, mentorship, and access to build confidence and opportunity across Atlanta's East Side. So Heaney Koch is the founder of Jessye Norman School of Arts, Eastside Atlanta. She's a visionary leader and community advocate. She established JNSA2 to expand equitable access to arts. Her mission blends creativity, collaboration, and courage to ensure every child experiences the power of artistic discovery. Thena Johnson is a board member and proud parent within the DO community. She champions parent engagement and equitable arts access by bridging families and leadership through service, fundraising, and advocacy. Her passion lies in ensuring that every student has a space to grow, create, and thrive. This set of awesome ladies are joined by Deborah Neal. She is their small business partner, CEO of Pathways to Empowerment Counseling. Deborah is a valued community member dedicated to mental wellness and empowerment. She supports students and families through holistic care and mentorship. Her partnership reflects a shared commitment to nurturing creativity, healing, and purpose within Atlanta's art ecosystem. Welcome, ladies. Welcome to Soul Thursday, Ms. Coke. How you had the vision to launch this Atlanta Art School, because as my understanding, it wasn't the original location, but you saw it that Atlanta had a location as well. Tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So, my church, a little church on the east side of the city in Decatur, had a big empty space. And I launched a task force to figure out a beautiful income generating use for that space. And at the same time that our church, Holy Cross, is looking for a partner, and our dream was to have a partner that had children and that would bring life to the church and that would be mission based and generate some income for the church. At the same time, we were looking for a partner. The first school in Augusta was looking for a location in Atlanta. And so I like to say that it was a match made in heaven. And so we're, just delighted to have launched a second location in a community that we have found really, really needs it. And so when we opened, it was very, very clear that this kind of education was missing in that part of DeKalb County.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. And what I want to do is go round robin. So I'm going to throw out some questions, and this is my canned questions. We often have my canned questions, then we go to the audience. So, audience, be ready to ask your questions because as we dig into it, you'll have the opportunity to ask your questions as well. And most importantly, figure out how you can support. So, then I would love to hear about how you got involved and what you were doing. I mean, to get involved, like, how did you and Jessye Norman, Hearts. How did you guys connect?
So we connected. A very good friend of mine is a member of Holy Cross Church and a Howard alum. And she told me about this program and asked me if my son, Amari, would like to attend a performing arts camp. And Amari is a typical boy. He loves gaming. He wants to be an astronaut. And I was thinking, I don't know about this. But she said it was a 3-week program and it's free. I said, okay, well, he can experience something new. So I enrolled him, not really sure. So the first day he got in trouble because I don't think he wanted to be there. And after that, I had to come and visit him and explain to him, you have two choices, and he didn't like the other choice. But after that, I noticed every day he was ready for school, camp, and he got to choose his focus. I thought he was going to choose art because he likes to draw, but I found out, oh no, I'm choosing theater, and I said, okay. He chose theater and we went through the 3 weeks excited, every day ready to go, up, ready, dressed. And at the end of the 3 weeks, they had a showcase and he had to perform. Now, as a mom, I was a little nervous because sometimes he has a stutter. But I said, you know your lines? Are you ready? Oh, yeah, yeah, I'm ready. Coach has us ready. I'm like, okay. So when he performed, he did so well with such confidence. He even wrote part of the script. It was a poem the kids had to perform, I had to hold back tears because I didn't know. I didn't know he had it in him. And then at the end of the program, the kids, they're all clapping. Then they have to go. They're starting to cry. They're hugging each other. And I'm like, okay, you ready to go? He said, no, I have to go console my friends. I'm like, now the first day, you gonna get kicked out. Now you have to console your friends because you all can't leave each other. So that was the first year. And then he all year long, it was like, when am I going back to Jesse Norman? When is Jesse Norman? He was in several camps. And it was like a countdown to Jesse Norman. He just absolutely loved his experience. So that's my little two
Wow.
cents.
I love, love, love that story because, I feel like from sitting next to you, I heard a few stories about Omar, right?
Mhm.
So when you say he got in trouble, I'm like, well, I'm not telling you business, but that sound about right, right? But the other part, I can see why you were close to tears, right? Because you're like, whose child is this, right?
Yeah,
And it's nothing like a moment where we as parents see our children blossom and we
exactly.
didn't even know, right? What a moment. Well, since I know part of the story, I know things haven't always been so, ideal at Jesse Norman.
So you want to take that? Some of the barriers?
Sure. So, as we have grown, I mean, there's the barriers that any new nonprofit will face, of having to raise money, having to build an infrastructure, having to face the market, things like that. But I think in particular in this climate, you all have heard about the demise of funding for the arts nationally. And, it's probably the most adverse philanthropic environment that we have seen, especially for arts-based nonprofits, probably in a generation. And so, what has happened is that there's been a cascading effect. So big nonprofits that are in the arts are losing their funding, and then the cascading effect is that smaller nonprofits like us are also getting squeezed even more. So it's a really adverse environment for us.
Thank you for sharing that. So, based on the adverse environment, you guys actually had to go and restructure.
Mhm.
Tell us about what led to that, and feel free to jump in. Tell us about what led to your decision to restructure.
So I'll start with that. So, first I was a parent 2 summers, and then I saw where there was advertisement about fundraising, and I've done some fundraising, and I volunteered. As we have been working together on a crowdfunding platform and finding out some of the challenges with funding and trying for grants, it has been evident that we have to kind of refocus, and we are continuing to fundraise. But one of the things we have recently decided to do was to restructure to primarily volunteer led organization. We are still fundraising, but we want to keep the program going. So it's been a bold move, but I've experienced it personally working with kids, all volunteers, and that's what we're moving towards now. So the requirement is still to have professional instructors, but we're going to seek volunteers and structure the training and have parents come in, which they did this past summer, and feed the children. We're going to have volunteers to help us every day with the children, make sure they get the training, and we have volunteers for literacy to teach literacy twice a day. And then we're going to have some parents to work on marketing the program. So the program is a 3-week program. It'll start approximately July 6th through the 24th. And with this new model, we're launching it with a town hall that will be Sunday, November 23rd. And we're going to be talking to our parents, the Holy Cross community, and other. It's open to the public. And we're going to be going through the model and discussing with the parents and others on how they can get involved. So we're shifting, but we're still going to have a quality program that is a commitment from everyone. And we have a lot of parents and other community members that have been supporting us and will continue to support us.
I can only imagine, Thina, as you go through this process of finding this organization. Because as a dad, I know what it means to shop, 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 and look for organizations that consistently don't meet the goal. But then you find an organization and all of a sudden they run into challenges. Is it safe to say financial struggles, or would you describe it as leadership struggles? For the nonprofits, for the parents, for the, future donors who are listening, help them understand some of the I guess, planned challenges you guys ran into, especially 2025?
I think definitely money. Money is a critical concern for us. That's just the reality. And I think it's true for any nonprofit, but in particular for us. But what I found is that money is like the presenting issue. There are always other issues that are behind money, right? And one of the things that I've discovered as the founder, over these past few years is just capacity. Like the sheer volume of work that it takes to launch a nonprofit of this kind was completely overwhelming. I'd heard it was hard, but I could not believe just like the amount of human work that it takes to do something like this. And so, we need to like, really, really expand, to Thena's point about the town hall. We need to drastically expand the number of people that are working as volunteers. And one of the things that's a part of the restructuring program that it's separate, a separate kind of project from the actual restructuring of the program, which is what Thena's working on, is us to just build capacity. Like we need a team that's going to go out and do PR for us. We're really in the entertainment industry. These children are performing, and we want to make sure that they have a great audience, that people see, that we promote them and promote the amazing work that we're doing adequately. We need to stand up, we need to do fundraising, of course. We need a governance team, like all these different things that like, when I started this project at Holy Cross, it was like me and three other people to do all that work. And so part of the issue with fundraising is just the sheer volume of work that it takes to do this that I just didn't know. Um, you know, plus the adverse market for philanthropy as well.
Thank you for sharing that. I shared in the chat where you guys can actually, anyone who's listening, and I'll also send out an email after it, where you guys can participate in the town hall. Now, Tina, I think the town hall is going to be virtual, right?
No, actually, it's going to be in person. It's going
Okay.
to be at Holy Cross in Decatur. So the first town hall will be in person from 2 to 4.
Okay. And I just want to make sure you're clear. So you have the town hall, and then you also have the request for volunteers, right? How can the audience, I like what Ms. Cook said, there's the sure logistics and the number of people required to keep this machine. How can people actually volunteer? Like if there's like an intern that wants to help with marketing and communication, how would they reach out to you guys and do that?
On the new work, there is a get involved um, link, and they can sign up there to volunteer. We kind of break down some of our needs, and they can sign up. And if they don't know, just leave their information. We'll still contact them.
Awesome, awesome. Wanted to make sure I was clear about that. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about the people in the process. Ms. Coke kind of alluded to, the sheer number of people involved. I'm kind of curious, how do you guys invite students to participate? And what does a typical day look like? So I think, Thena, you were just kind of walking at church and you kind of, pass by, but how do you guys reach out to other students? And I'm definitely curious about your current, student target enrollment and if you guys are gonna be able to sustain that, or if you go to a volunteer, is it gonna drop? I'm curious to see, what's in front of you when it comes to the number of students, and what does, the typical day look like? And I guess it's a multiple part question, sorry. And how do you find students?
So the team would go to schools in the area. I think it's about 15 schools that they went in the area and met with each school and talked to the performing arts or arts department or the assistant principal and presented information about the school. That's one way. And then word of mouth. That's how I found out about it, word of mouth. And then Facebook, et cetera. But mainly meeting with the different schools is how we found on the students. And then as far as the typical day, so the school is from 8 to 3 primarily. And in the morning, when you said the typical days, in the morning, the students come from 8 to 9 and they get breakfast. Breakfast is free. So that's one of the committees we're going to need to help us with. And then after that, they have a group warm up activity for about 30 minutes. And then they have a reading break. So we have volunteer teachers that help them with reading. So they have 15 minutes where they have to read, and then they break off into their classes. So, art, visual art, dance, theater,
Music.
music. Thank you. So they'll do the class for about an hour and a half. Then they have lunch, and then that's provided. But this last summer, it was parents providing most of the food, the donations for the food, and then the interns, et cetera, serving the food. And then after that, they have another hour and a half approximately for class. And then after that, they have reading and writing for about half an hour, and then the camp is over. But there is a after hours after camp program for people who work. That is a cost for that. So the
Wow. I mean, such a rich curriculum. I mean, initially I was curious about what your full day looked like if it was only after school, but it seems like you guys go from full day and after school included. I love the story that you shared, Athena, about Amari's experience, and it's just such a beautiful. I'm also curious, Miss Coke, if you would like to share a story of student or family, success by participating in the school. For example, as a dad who's into STEM and engineering and
Mhm.
tech things, let's say I've been a little sleep, right, or unaware about the art community and what's happening. Share with us some stories about the parents who have why this art is so important to our children and their future, and any examples of how you guys have influenced or inspired families.
I'll give you two. So on the first day of the first summer camp, so our very, very, very first day opening, there was a young lady who came in and her grandmother actually tricked her into coming. And it's because we do an audition. Every student who comes to JNSA has to do an audition. And she was terrified. And so I just said to her, hey, listen, audition is just talking. Are you scared of me? And she was like, no, I'm not scared of you. I was like, well, that's an audition. You just need to say a few things and that's it. And so we went from that to she was the lead actor in our play for, I think it was the spring semester. So she remembered all her lines. She stood up on stage in front of everybody. It was awesome to see the arc of her growth over the year. It was very, very exciting to see that. So, that's some of the work that we do with students. The other story is pretty poignant for me. So, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we found out it was actually on a Sunday morning that one of the students that was in that same summer camp, our very first program, was found sleeping outside the church door on Sunday morning. And, of course, I was deeply moved by that. But what his mom and, some other people said that in his most vulnerable moment, he came to us. And, the weight of that, you know, the weight that like, the impact that we've had on him in the time that we spent with him, I think it's deeply moving. And it reminded me of the responsibility that we have. It's a pretty awesome responsibility to care for to be the steward of children's talent, of their time, and in some cases, their future.
What a moment, I just can only imagine what that felt like. I can only imagine the responsibility, great work that you all are doing. I would love to hear about, certain lessons learned. It's something about this work that I feel like it can change you. It can help you evolve. What lessons have you guys learned in launching, in East Atlanta that have shaped your approach to moving forward? Because a lot has happened, right? A lot of reorganization. Some people that were there in the beginning, they're not there anymore. Money that was there in the beginning is not there anymore. What have you guys learned? What are some lessons learned that's shaping your movement moving forward?
I think for me, I'm learning from Sonini about building relationships and nurturing relationships because, you know, I like to get it done, and that's it. But, constantly explaining and being patient because I work in a corporate environment and nonprofit is totally different. So working with people and meeting them at their level and seeing how they can help and just accepting what they can do and then be appreciative of that. So if all you can do is come and teach and read with the kids for 15 minutes, I'm grateful. That's good. That we're winning. So it's just different working in a corporate environment versus and then every donation, and I want to thank Miss Neal for your donation and your support. Every donation, we're like, woohoo! We can pay for the website. Yay! We can follow up with this person. It is so critical right now. I mean, we're working on some other larger donations, but right now the environment is so different than it was maybe a year ago that we have to be creative. But I am very encouraged because we do have a partnership with the Howard Alumni Association. Ms. Norman was an alum of Howard, and I'm an alum, and we have partnered with Howard. And as I'm talking to fellow alum, I'm running into them and telling them what we're doing. I was in rooms to go, and I had my sweatshirt on, and when I struck up with a conversation with a young alum, and I said, well, what was your major? And she said, fine arts. I said, really? And so I told her about the school, and she was so excited. She said, I run a dance studio. I said, we need dance teachers. I'm going to tell you what's going on. And she said, don't worry about it. I'll be there. I understand. You don't have to explain anything to me. I get it. So those things have encouraged me to keep pushing. He said, Thina, just keep me informed. I'm on the list. Keep me on the list. I will be there. I love kids. And so he starts touting his resume, how he's worked with kids. And I'm like, you understand where we are right now? He said, don't worry about that. I got you. So I'm learning to just be vulnerable, explain where we are, and people understand what's going on now. So they are willing to help.
What a awesome testimony. As you share that, I begin to see the purpose come unfold because having spent my whole career in corporate, I know how it can take up all your time, how it can isolate you, how it can just suck all your energy, but to begin to find purpose in the social sector. Me and Katie often talk about the leap of going from one to the other can be very challenging because it's very different. So shout out to you for your experience because it's such an awesome experience and the stories you share. Excuse me, since you mentioned about giving, I'm sure it's nice to get the $1,000 checks, but I think you were telling me that $100 donations are also valuable. So I dropped in the chat where people today, right here doing the show, can donate to Jesse Norman School of Arts. Tell me what type of donations would you guys like to see?
Any donation is good. Now we will make good use of any donation, but we do have a program for small businesses where based on what you donate, we want to promote your business. So that information is on our website. We have a newsletter and we're constantly communicating and we would like to promote those that support us. Like Miss Neal has supported us and I reached out to my son's dentist and she said, communities that want to give, we will constantly be giving you updates on what we're doing with the funding, but we need to feed the children. We need to promote this program. We have to pay rent. So any money that folks donate, we greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing that. One last question I want to open up to the audience. What does success look like in 2026 and beyond for you all? 26. And Deborah, I would love to hear also why you support the organization because I think when people decide to get involved with an organization, there's typically a purpose, there's typically a reason, a gut felt type opportunity. But what does success look like in 2026? Let's start with Ms. Coke and then we'll go with Deborah and then Athena.
So 2026 for us is going to be a really pivotal year. It's a transformational year. And so, in addition to the table stakes of any nonprofit, the fundraising, the building community, the continued programming, for us, it's under Thina's leadership undertaking this massive transformation in the organization. So, for me, success looks like empowering Thina, right? Making sure that she has all the resources, all the support, all the infrastructure she needs to make this transformation successful. It's pivoting the program effectively. It's bringing the community along behind us, continuing to do the storytelling and letting people know that regardless of all of the changes and the move, one thing that hasn't changed is the kids still need us. That hasn't changed. That's not going anywhere. And as long as the kids still need us, JNSA2 is going to be here. And we need y'all to get behind us. So that's really for me what success looks like in 2026.
Thank you, Ms. Coke. Go ahead, Deborah.
I'll first answer the question about what I believe success in 2026 looks like, and then I'll circle back to why it is that I support the organization. So I know the power of word of mouth. So it's the students themselves who, in the moments, in the months, in the years, the short span of time, they go out and they're demonstrating something that they heard. They're demonstrating something that people have never seen before, a decision, a character, saying no, saying yes to something they wouldn't normally say yes to that can be healthy, saying no to something that's unhealthy through those unintended experiences that they have had. And that shows up, that's going to show up next year. So I'm envisioning that several of the students that were involved in 2025 have already talked about it. They've gotten others excited. And I think engagement, greater, deeper engagements from the horse's mouth, the students. And as they go out and they get more engaged, that's going to open up. That's going to something that you cannot measure. And so I'm going to go ahead, if it's okay, I'll tell you why I support the organization. Can I do that? It's maybe a little bit out of order. So I just moved to the Atlanta area from the Kansas City area several months back. And it was my first, I moved here right at the time that they had the summer school. And I was invited to the performances at the end of that 3 weeks. And as I was just struck by the chatter before the performance, the roaring chatter during the performance, and afterwards. Usually people are headed out. They're headed. I mean, it's 9 o'clock, 9:30. People are, I'm out of here, you know. People were hanging around, they were laughing, they were smiling. And the kids were like exploded. I saw a vitality in the kids. So that's really kind of how I got involved. But there's two things about that. One is I asked, I'm the chatty me. I'm asking one of the persons in the audience how they happened to come. And they said, well, last year they came as a guest. And as a guest, they brought their daughter, right? And the daughter just came. She had nothing else to do. And she was so revved up that she came back and signed up for 2025. So have her sit there, not as a guest, the parent, and now seeing her daughter on stage alive and having the benefits, all of that really struck me. So I saw the enthusiasm myself. I felt the vitality from the very moment. And that vitality and that aliveness, as I sat there, this is what I didn't expect. As I sat there, I'm going back and I'm remembering what it was like to me as an eighth grader.
Mm.
I was sheltered. My mom was afraid I was going to get pregnant, so she kept me in the house as long as she could. But I went to an integrated school in the eighth grade. And in that integrated experience, I fell in love with my gym teacher, Mrs. Small. And Mrs. Small encouraged me, invited me to come play field hockey. Who's Black and plays field hockey? I got involved with field hockey and I got involved in after school activities, just in sports. And I met people and it revolutionized my life. Mrs. Small took money out of her own pocket. She paid for her own gas. She not only got me and us involved in school activities, but she took us outside of the school. Nobody for women, when I was coming up for a girl to be involved in sports, that was life shaping. I learned the character, I learned responsibility. And then there was two people there. I'd never gave college a thought. Nobody in my family was talking about going to college. And they were talking about, oh, I'm going to this school, I'm going to that school. High school counselors did never ask me what I wanted to do once I didn't have family members that, what do you want to do after high school? Well, I don't know. But they started talking about college. And guess what? Somehow, by a dime in a pop bottle, I started talking about college. And I went to college, didn't know what I was doing, but I went to that first Black student meeting and they said, look to the person, everybody, the Black Student Union leadership said, speak, volunteer, leader, invested in someone else other than themselves. Look to the left, everybody look to the right. One of you is not going to be here second semester. I determined that I was not going to be that person. So I graduated college. And from that, I'll just say it was the inspiration of that gym coach who tirelessly took us out on her own dime. That set the tone for me to becoming. It wasn't really good enough to be a student athlete, but I've been a lifelong exerciser. I'm healthier than you can imagine. And guess what? It's just opened up a portal for me to learn how to socialize and grow in ways that I never imagined. My daughter watched me play basketball. She started when she was 4 years old. Somebody picked her up, gave her a basketball, and she shot put that ball in that hoop. And she played basketball when she was started in I think the 3rd grade. She got a scholarship, free scholarship, free tuition, extra scholarship. She never paid a penny for her graduate. I mean her
Tuition.
or graduate. And I'm telling you, all that is a legacy. I can give her a legacy that she never had before because somebody else encouraged me out of their own dime. And I'll just stop and say, from that, it just opened me up to being able to be who I am today. And so that's why I came the first time and now I contributed because of all of that.
Thank you for that story.
And
Quite
and I want to
inspiration.
pick up on one thing that Deborah is saying that I think is so important for people to understand, which is the generational nature of what we're doing. Because what happens when we listen, I'm going to tell you something, and people may take it the wrong way, but a Black person with self-esteem is a threat to the entire social order. Black people with self-esteem will change everything. And so when you have a child who really gets from the top of their head to the tips of their toes how awesome they are and locates for themselves their own divine nature, right? Their own creativity, their own sense of well-being, their own sense of self. Like Omari seeing for himself that he can speak, right? Nobody, it's different than having somebody tell you that you can do something, but for him to get it for himself, who he really is, it changes everything. It is life-changing. And it will change generations when we start. Not that Black people don't have self-esteem, we do. But for people to really cultivate that sense of self, for a child in particular to cultivate that sense of self, it puts them on a completely different life trajectory.
I'm glad you said that because it's so, so true. Just last week, we were talking about self-actualization and the question I've been asking for months, how does one become community minded? I love the response of Deborah and I love your addition because it answers the question. Deborah tells a story of how she became that self-actualized person, how she navigated up that Maslow's hierarchy of need and began to see, hey, it's not just about me, it's about others. Because, we know we live in a selfish world. And then, Ms. Coke, you kind of bring us back. And for the people who wasn't picking it up, you got to read between the lines. You're like, let me just be clear. A person of color, Black folks with self-esteem. There's so many things that's out there destroying Black boys, destroying Black girls, destroying community, but all about confidence. When you have that confidence, when you know your voice, when you know yourself, all of a sudden there's something to be reckoned with. So shout out to you guys. Now is a good time for you guys in the chat. I dropped in the chat where you guys can donate, but what I want to do is hear from you guys. I want to hear some questions from the audience of what you guys are thinking. And I know you guys aren't shy, so I sent a few people a unmute button, but at the same time, feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself. What questions do you have for the audience? One, if you want to donate, I just put that link in the chat. Dina said there's different ways to donate. You can donate as a small business. You can donate your talent. You can donate your time. You can donate financially. And I love it because I seen Thina in that project management in the project management street. So y'all better get ready because she gonna have 100-page project plan, and
Now
y'all better get ready. I'm
talking to
telling you,
it.
she gonna be. And I'm telling y'all, I seen her do it, right? Did I tell you when she pulled me over, she said, brother, you're touching my stuff. Because she wasn't playing. Miss Coke, now, I'm telling you, if she pull you to the side and tell you touching the stuff, I'm just
Oh,
warning
she's
you,
already
right?
done it. In fact, we have like a morning call at 9.
I said to say, Katie, we haven't heard from you. I'm sure you got a lot on your mind. Tell me, what are you thinking for the ladies? I mean, you work in this industry. Tell me what you've seen and what you've heard, and what are your thoughts about the challenges that they're going through at Jessye Norman?
Sure. I think one of the biggest challenges, I don't think any of them mentioned this. Ms. Koch talked so much about the philanthropic sort of landscape. The thing about Georgia is that Georgia has the lowest per capita investment in arts in the U.S. Among all of the states, Georgia, I think it's about 14 cents per person is how much the state invests in the arts. And the sort of sad part about that is that the arts studies show time and time again that an investment in the arts is a good investment, economic investment in a community. So it's really sort of unfortunate that we don't actually invest in that. I think that for an organization that is about the arts, one of the most important things is figuring out what those talking points about your organization have to be so that people who have a stereotype in their mind of what the arts are, they're actually able to see themselves in the arts, right? So they can relate to what it is that you do and how it can have an impact on them. It's a tough, tough philanthropic landscape. It's tough to get people to donate money now, but without question, I mean, this organization is awesome. I mean, I've had some time to look into it, and it's definitely it's worth an investment. And it's not just about the money; it's also about the time commitment that we can all make to an investment like this. Also,
As you talked about the stereotype, I think you were talking about me because I definitely was stereotype. I'm like, they gonna be over there dancing and stuff. That's what I thought, right? Because I don't know, I'm a football guy, engineer type, right? But the stories they begin to tell are so, so, so powerful. It's what is supposed to happen that a lot of times doesn't happen. So shout out to you guys, in East Atlanta and Jesse Norman for doing the work you do. So what I would like to do is give you guys a chance to wrap up. I have to. So for Miss Coke, for Thina, is there anything that you would like to say that you didn't get a chance to say in order to wrap up your message and connect with the audience and for the people who will listen to this replay?
Well, one thing I would like to say is to like us and share, like us on Facebook, Instagram, and share our message. If you don't have time, you know someone that does have time, you know someone that has a child, share information about us because word of mouth is so critical. And, I hope we can get this recording to share it ourselves because, like you said, there are stereotypes and people they want to get everyone in STEM, and not me too, okay? But the self-esteem and being able to speak in front of people, that is so important. And I feel like being able to say a poem that you wrote in front of people about your feelings, that goes a long way. So please share our message, come to the town hall. We need your help. And this is a light. So I just want to say it's there's a lot going on, and this is a light for me. I spend a lot of time working on this, but it's like therapy for me. When I'm watching the news, I put that thing on mute and I do some more work for Jesse Norman because a lot of things I can't change, but I can help change this.
Awesome, awesome. Miss Coke, any closing statement?
I'll go after Deborah. Deborah, did you have anything else you
Oh
wanted to
yeah,
add?
go ahead,
Okay.
Deborah.
Well, I was thinking about in my own lived experience of finding a new forward pathway to empowerment and sense of self from the inside out. And I think this is the hope and the right before us as never before that word we need it, in this time and era. This is the moment for a new fat path forward that, like they say, anyone can count the seeds that come out of an apple, but only God can count the apples that come from one seed. And I think your seed tonight has the power to yield countless apples.
I like that.
Some people listening to this who are called, there is a place for you. Like we have, through Thina's wonderful work, have started to build our community of supporters. We now have 100 people that we have in our crowdfunding campaign. Economic sustainability for us can happen through small donors. So if we get to like 500 donors based on our current numbers, we can do it. We can do it. And so I just want to tell people that I don't know what donor number you're going to have, right? Like, I don't know which number is yours, but if you're listening to this, there's a number that's for you, right? And so I would encourage you, if you're moved, give at any level that works for you, just to get involved and like give us the atta girl, right? That you really do see what we're doing, that you approve, and join the community of people that are supporting us at any level.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Miss Coke. What a awesome discussion, Katie, as we begin to prepare for this, we had several discussions. We began to do research, begin to understand not only the social sector, but what was happening nationally as grants and funding began to be cut. What's happening where an organization may start out with some funding, enough to get you through year one. But what happens in year two? What happens when, you hire people, they don't do what they were supposed to do, and then you kind of have a fall, let's say a stumble. But then the dedication, the tenacity, the effort that it takes to continue And I'm glad Thina began to share her story because it's so, so powerful. The moments they talk about are the moments that we as parents pray for. The moment the child finds their authentic voice, the moment the child begins to understand their uniqueness in the world, whether it be poetry, whether it be singing, whether it be dancing, whether it be football or drawing. But a lot of kids don't get a chance to get that moment. As we know, a lot of people reach adulthood and still are not comfortable with their own voice. They don't know what makes them unique. So shout out to Jessye Norman, East Atlanta, for the work that you guys are doing. Katie, you brought up a great segment, about that was parallel that began to show us, hey, this is not only happening at Jessye Norman, it's happening all throughout our United States. And you gave me the example of the baby formula experiment. I didn't even know what that was until you brought it up. The audience, help us understand, what is the baby formula experiment, and why is it important to the conversation we're having today?
Sure. I think I consider it more of a debacle than anything else, right? Because it was the opportunity. I'm going to tie this back into JNSA2, right? Not that there's anything related to a debacle at JNSA2, right? But no, really, there's not. I think number one, the debacle was about a young woman on TikTok decided that she was just going to call up a bunch of churches to see if they would donate a can of baby formula. And she called up a bunch of faith institutions, not just churches, but also mosques and just some other organizations to ask for a donation. And she had a baby crying in the background, an infant crying in the background. She called these different organizations. Most of them said no, that no, they would not give her a can of baby formula, right? And so she just kept record of them, and she kept record of the ones that did give. The fallout basically was that, she published this list of who did and did not give. They were some mega churches, some small churches, some medium-sized churches. I mean, the average church in the US is under 100, I think it's under 100 people actually. But she published this information about some of these big name churches and smaller churches that did or did not give. And it was really an example, number one, of are we connected to our mission, and does our mission actually speak for our actions? Do our actions actually correlate with our mission? That's one thing. The other thing that I thought was really interesting was how many people actually made an assumption that all churches had the wherewithal to have a food pantry, not even understanding that there are small churches that don't their staff consists of a pastor, right? And maybe a part-time secretary if they're lucky. They might not even have the resources to run a program like a food pantry, but they might give food out, right? They might actually contribute to a food pantry that's in town. So there was so much sort of misinformation about what it takes to run an organization. But then there was also a disconnect between the organization and what people perceived its mission to be. Frankly, liked what Ms. Koch said. You're pulling it up. All right.
So I would like to just kind of give you guys an overview. And the reason why this is important to me is sometimes the people who don't donate, I know they exist. They're like, well, can't they go to the church? Can't somebody else do that? Can't they just ask whatever? So as the lady called all of these churches and asked for some baby formula, this is what she got. Baby crying in the background. No, 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 we don't have it. We can't do it. No, we don't have it. We don't know what to do. 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 Maybe kind of, sort of. The good news is there's a few black churches who be like, we got you. But the significant number is no. One, this Islamic organization delivered the formula. This Buddhist temple said yes nationwide. What was the key finding? Mega churches, large Christian organizations, overwhelmingly no. Smaller white church, one of them said yes. Historically black church, Jeffersontown, kind of said yes, but some would no. Moss maybe said yes. So sometimes we begin to think, hey, this is no big deal. Can't the kids get it somewhere? Can't they find it somewhere? We live during some challenging times.
I
And
like
for the
that the
sake
last line said that, like, all the non-Christian all the non-Christian organizations said yes.
there is a lot going on. So, what I'd like to do is open this up for discussion because the work that Jessye Norman is doing is so, so, so important. And some people may think, oh, don't we got social organizations that will help and support that? No. And Katie, from your fundraising that donations come from who again?
Overwhelmingly from individuals. I mean, one of the things I think it was Ms. Koch was saying was that find your lane that you want to travel in, right? One of the things that's most important is those monthly donations. 500 monthly donors can really provide a healthy foundation for your organization. But it's the getting involved and coming to understand what's needed, right? She said it very simply. We need monthly donors. And, we're not here to make a big pitch or anything like that. But the bottom line is we have to support our organizations, right? We have to know what's in the community. We need to support what's in the community. It's the bottom line.
Awesome, awesome. So now
Yeah.
I want to hear from the audience. They being shy tonight. What's going
They
on?
really are. They
Let
really
me
are.
see. I know they ain't shy because they always call me after the show, be like, Calvin, what you should have said was this. I'm like, what you should have said was that. Anyway,
Because
I ain't calling nobody out. What's up, Rhonda from North Carolina? Rhonda always say, Calvin, can you send the information early? I want to put it on my news list. I said, child, I'm tired. I can't get it out 2 weeks in advance. Rhonda, I know you work with a lot of organizations in North Carolina. I would love to hear from you, but also some of the people in the audience who do this type of work. I'm curious to, you guys would definitely hear tonight, but I want to hear from you. I want to hear your thoughts, your feelings. The chat was quiet too. So I'm curious about what you guys are thinking.
Hey, Calvin, can I mention something? I don't know if you remember from, I think it was like season 1, and we had an older woman who had been a teacher, and she was, this great teacher of the year back in the 70s and everything, right? And I
Yeah,
remember her
Bonnie Bracy Sutton.
yeah, Bonnie Bracy Sutton, exactly. I remember her talking about how when she became a teacher and she was working with all of these basically children, Black children is who she was teaching, but the community itself was providing stuff like rugs for her classroom and furniture for her classroom and all these kind of things. And they were giving small amounts of money. They were giving what they could. And it's what made her classroom successful. It's sort of like the same thing that made Barack Obama into the doggone president. It was the small donations, it was the engagement, it was the people out in the community that said, this is something that I believe in, therefore I need to lend my time and my talent, my treasure to it, right? And that's what these women here are asking for today. They're asking for that same sort of action, that same sort of investment that our mothers and fathers used to do 40 years ago, right? 40, 50, 60 years ago. It's still the same thing that makes our communities work.
I remember that story, and I tell you what I liked about it. It really just took me back to a time. And she would say, if a janitor saw an old used desk that he felt like my classroom could use, he would deliver that old used desk so the kids could use it. Thank you, Thina, for connecting us with Jessye Norman. Thank you, Deborah, for sharing your journey to what I call self-actualization and community mindedness. Thank you, Ms. Koch, for having the vision to begin to say, hey, arts is needed in East Atlanta. I want to thank you guys for hanging out. Once again, look for the replay at soulthursday.com. Be thinking, who do you know who can contribute? Thina, be thinking about, how I can help you guys virtually. We have a national audience here at Soul Thursday. So for the people who can't be at the town hall, find a way that you can virtually contribute. And I know Thina will come up with some nuances, whether it be workshops, engagements. I think, as Ms. Koch was saying, it is a generational thing. As I tell my son, you have the opportunity to be the best of both worlds, having the hard work ethics of the working class mixed with the access and exposure of the middle. And that begins to create the change of tomorrow that Ms. Koch is speaking about. So I'm moved by the work you guys are doing.